Over 300 people lost their lives in airplane accidents in 2024, making it the deadliest year for aviation since 2018. The final week alone was especially tragic, with 2 of the 3 deadliest crashes happening just days apart. This sharp rise in fatalities stood in stark contrast to 2023, a year hailed as the safest in aviation history, with no major passenger aircraft accidents. Some disasters were freak tragedies. Others, they should never have happened. From a missile strike to a deadly runway collision, these were the deadliest aviation disasters of 2024. Thank you for watching another gripping episode by Who. The year had barely begun when tragedy struck. Japan Airlines Flight 516 collided with a Coast Guard aircraft upon landing at Haneda Airport. A massive fire erupted. Multiple lives were lost. That January evening, a Japan Airlines Airbus A350 was on final approach to runway 34R at Tokyo's busy airport. Everything had gone smoothly. The flight was cleared to land. At the same time, a Japan Coast Guard Dash 8 was taxiing on a mission to deliver earthquake relief supplies. Already delayed by 40 minutes, the crew felt pressure to make up time. Air traffic control instructed the Dash 8 to hold at point C5, a position short of the runway. The phrase "number 1" meant it was next in line, not cleared for takeoff. But the Dash 8 crew misunderstood. Instead of holding, they crossed the line and entered the same runway. Nobody, not the tower, not the A350 crew, realized what was about to happen. Controllers, distracted by multiple aircraft movements, missed the breach. Inside the A350 cockpit, pilots followed standard procedures. The Dash 8 was hidden in a blind spot, invisible until the last seconds. A runway conflict alert flashed on tower monitors, a warning that an aircraft was on an active runway. But the system had triggered so many false alarms in the past that controllers ignored it. Seconds later, the A350's landing lights lit up the Dash 8, directly in their path. It was too late. The aircraft was too low, too committed to abort. The A350's left engine slammed into the Dash 8's tail. An explosion. The Dash 8 was instantly destroyed. 5 of its 6 crew members were killed. Only the captain survived, badly injured. The A350, trailing fire and smoke, skidded nearly a kilometer before veering into the grass. Inside the cabin, passengers were thrown into chaos as smoke filled the fuselage. But thanks to the swift action of the crew, all 367 passengers and 12 crew members made it out, every single one, in just 11 minutes. Aaban Airlines Flight 8243 was hit by a missile over Russia. It stayed airborne for a time, but ultimately crashed, killing dozens. The Embraer 190 had taken off from Baku, headed to Gori, Russia. On board were 62 passengers and 5 crew members. About 40 minutes into the flight, the plane entered Russian airspace. Weather deteriorated. GPS navigation failed. The aircraft's tracking signal vanished, likely due to GPS jamming, a growing problem in areas with ongoing electronic warfare. Despite this, the crew pushed forward and were cleared to land. Fog was thick. Visibility was terrible. The first landing attempt failed. So did the second. The pilots decided to return to Baku, but then came the explosion. Shrapnel ripped through the cabin. The plane had been struck by a missile, a Russian Pantsir S-1 surface-to-air weapon. The blast tore through the rear of the plane. Survivors described hearing metal fragments shredding the fuselage. A passenger jet shot down in peacetime. The pilots, unsure of the full damage, initially thought it was a bird strike. They issued a distress call and set the emergency squawk code. They considered diverting to Mineralny Vody, but weather was poor. Next, they aimed for Makhachkala, but again, conditions worsened. With few options left, they turned toward Aktau, Kazakhstan. Over the Caspian Sea, the aircraft reappeared on flight trackers. But the flight was unstable. One emergency landing attempt failed, then another. On the third approach, contact was lost. The aircraft crashed 3 kilometers from Aktau International Airport. The right wing hit first. The plane flipped, broke apart, and exploded. Of the 67 people on board, 38 were killed, including both pilots and a flight attendant. The survivors were seated near the tail, which had detached and came to rest upside down. The pattern of damage confirmed a missile strike. Survivors said shrapnel had torn through the cabin mid-flight. The situation mirrored the infamous downing of MH17 in 2014, another civilian aircraft destroyed by a surface-to-air missile. While these tragedies make headlines, most aviation disasters happen during routine flights, like what happened in Nepal. On July 24th, a CRJ-200 operated by SAA Airlines was repositioning from Kathmandu to Pokhara. There were 19 people on board, mostly airline staff and technicians. The aircraft had been grounded for 34 days prior. A return to service inspection was done that morning. Takeoff began normally. But immediately after liftoff, the plane rolled dangerously. It banked sharply left and right. Seconds later, the right wingtip struck the ground. The aircraft slid forward, hit a freight container, and plunged into a deep gorge. A fire broke out. Of the 19 on board, 18 died. Only the captain survived. Investigators found the aircraft had rotated too aggressively during takeoff. Improper loading, flawed performance data, and procedural oversight at SAA Airlines were also cited. But the year wasn't done yet. In Brazil, on August 9th, an ATR 72-500 crashed en route from Cascavel to São Paulo. Severe icing conditions had been forecast, and warnings were in place. The aircraft encountered icing, turbulence, and thunderstorms. Shortly after, the stall warning activated. The plane entered a spin, flat, uncontrolled. It crashed into the front yard of a home near its destination. All 62 people on board were killed, including 6 oncologists, 4 university professors, and 2 children. 10 others missed the flight after waiting at the wrong gate. Preliminary analysis showed repeated desync system failures. Pilots had activated the system multiple times, but it failed to respond. Then came Lithuania. A Swift Air Boeing 737 cargo plane went down during descent to Vilnius International Airport. Eyewitnesses saw the plane descending steeply, engines whining abnormally. It crashed into a residential area just over a kilometer from the runway. 1 crew member was killed. 3 were injured. The aircraft's black boxes were recovered. Investigations are ongoing. And finally, South Korea. On December 29th, a Jedu Air Boeing 737 crashed at Muan International Airport, the deadliest aviation disaster in South Korea in decades. The approach seemed normal, but air traffic control warned of bird activity. Minutes later, the plane declared a mayday, bird strike. The crew attempted a go-around. Flaps were retracted. Landing gear remained up. A high-speed landing was attempted, but the aircraft touched down too far down the runway. It couldn't stop. It overran the runway and slammed into a concrete structure. All 175 passengers and 4 crew members were killed. Only 2 crew members survived, rescued from the rear section, which had broken off. Feathers and bird blood were found in the engines. DNA confirmed the species. Baikal teal, a small duck common in East Asia. While the spike in aviation deaths was sharp in 2024, experts caution. Fatal crashes remain extremely rare. Even one major disaster can skew the numbers dramatically. As aviation safety consultant Jan Arwed Richter puts it, it's best to look at safety over decade-long periods. In 2023, there was 1 fatal accident for every 1.26 million flights, the lowest in over a decade. To put that in perspective, you'd have to fly every day for over 13,000 years to be involved in a single fatal accident. So while 2024 was tragic, aviation remains one of the safest ways to travel.